What's up, y'all? This is the Fem Future Podcast where we, you, me, and the audience around us get the opportunity to learn from amazing women curating a better future for themselves and others. I'm your host, Amber Latrice, and today we are joined by a Latina leader. She is the Chief Social Impact Officer at USC Credit Union, and she has her doctorate of education, and in her spare time, she is the founder of Baya. Now you're gonna have to tell me how I do with this pronunciation. So Baya stands for Brillantes Emprendedoras Latinas de Los Angeles.
Woo, that's right. That's right. Love
Listen,
it.
we're still working on the Espanol. We're still working. What is it? Estoy aprendiendo?
Yes. You
Yeah.
got it,
Okay.
girl. You got it.
We are working on it. Well, Rocio, welcome to the pod. How are you?
Thank you, Amber. I'm honored to be here with you, honestly. Thrilled to have this conversation just in a very genuine, authentic space. I appreciate you and I appreciate everyone that's listening.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Thank you so much for being on. Now, you and I had a little bit of time to connect. We were actually connected through a mutual friend, Dr. B. Shout out to Dr. B. I'm sure you guys have heard that episode. If you haven't, be sure to go back and listen to it, of course, after you're done listening to this one. So we had the opportunity to connect. I'm already blown away by the similarities of life and the similarities in our goals in life. But for our audience members that don't know exactly who you are, can you tell them a little bit about yourself?
Yeah. So, gosh, where do I start? That question's always a really big question, right? So, I mean, I'm a multitude of different identities coming together. Like I'm sure all the women that are listening, right? I am a mom of three beautiful children, my daughter and two boys. I'm a full-time professional, recent graduate of a doctorate program at USC. Shout out, fight on USC. And a wife, of course, can't negate that. And I founded Baya, which is an organization that I know we're going to dive into that's near and dear to my heart. That was really born out of a love for embracing community and just elevating the voice of Latina entrepreneurs, specifically in LA with this organization. But it started from an early age. I'm a daughter of imigrantes mexicanos, Mexican immigrants from the state of Querétaro, first gen. Spanish has been my first language, right? So there's a lot that goes into who I am, but just to kind of bring it full circle, that's a little bit about me, and I know we're gonna dive into a little bit more of that.
Yes, yes, yes. So thank you for letting us know like exactly where you are and setting that foundation for us. But I want to know a little bit about who you used to be and kind of where some of who you have now become like originated. So who were you? Who was Rocio at age 18?
And I chuckle at this question because I think about joking earlier, 18. Wait, that was like I was having lots of fun at 18. No, but in all seriousness, I think, at the tender age of 18, recently graduated from high school, right? I grew up in a really small town, kind of off the central coast of California. Lived there all my life, raised there, right? So now I'm an LA girl, I can say. But prior to that, I grew up in this small town. And, I feel like that really kind of shapes who you are, your environment, right? It's the whole nature nurture kind of concept is so true. So at 18, I was going to community college. I'm a avid fan and supporter of community colleges in our communities and what they can do for all of us. And so I was going to school. I figured at that point I really wanted to go into I was thinking like probation, some kind of like not law enforcement, but I was even thinking like FBI, like investigative kind of um, type of job. Had a part-time job at Sears, working a few hours, and still living at home. My parents, I'm very close to my parents. So I loved being there with them. Very close to them. Just side note, I love to sing. I call myself a shower
Ooh.
singer though. You're not someone you would come pay to hear sing, right? Let's just get that straight. But my dad and I bond over that. So my dad loves to sing, even, a story for another day. He recorded his own CD at one point, back when CDs were a thing.
Ooh. Okay.
And so I used to love just singing with my dad, when he was home because he worked a lot. But I was kind of a hometown girl. I just, went to school, went to work. I did go to, out to dances and that were local, right? I like to have fun too, but just kind of really trying to figure it out, it was like pre-going, like moving out and going off to university. So it was a time of like self-discovery and just trying to figure things out. But it was a beautiful time.
Wow. Wow. So I'd say from this side of the camera, like you figured it out. So for you for you to be on the journey from this 18-year-old that is still enjoying these beautiful moments with her parents, working part-time at Sears, starting to like kind of come into her own identity. How did you go from that girl to the amazing woman we see today?
Well, that's, I know we don't have like 8 hours to kind of really talk through all that, but I'll try to be succinct. Again, and your life shapes you, all aspects of your life. I think the good, the
Yeah.
bad, and the ugly, as they say, right? And so, I think coming from a family that has, that working parents, they came to this country when my sister was 2. I'm the youngest of 3. Not knowing the language, just knowing they wanted a better life for their kids, uh, which whatever that meant, right? But for sure, they knew it meant going to school, access to education was big in our
Yeah.
family. Um, I grew up cleaning. I tell people I grew up cleaning toilets with my mom on the weekends, and I say it in that way because I really want to paint a picture for bringing to light the life that a lot of immigrants then and now are facing when they come to a country where they don't know the language, they don't know the culture, and yet they know they need to get ahead and they know they need to learn the system so that they can build wealth, right? And they could build a safe community and just in opportunities for their families and their children. And so all of that I think really shaped my work ethic, right? The push to go to school and to kind of get a profession that I chose, not that I kind of fell into because I had to.
Mm.
Um, Kind of really pushed me to, pursue education and, work with my mom on the weekends and the summers when I was young, and then get a job as soon as I could and really just start saving money. And so education was always one of those things that I knew I was going to pursue. Never kind of thought about a doctorate really, but just getting to, college and bachelor's for sure was something that my parents pushed us for. And so I think all of that, seeing how hard they worked, how hard they struggled, how tired they were at times, and yet how we always felt safe and loved and accepted and found time to celebrate our culture and who we were, and not being ashamed of that, really gave me the strength, the work ethic, and just the desire to not only kind of come into my own and realize my
Mhm.
own dreams and really discover what those were, first of all, but to like love and support others for their vision and their dreams. And I think for me, it's really about, everybody's living their own journey, their own unique journey. And
Mhm.
there's no right or wrong. It's just how we experience life. And we really need to uplift each other in a way where we're feeling encouraged and empowered, whatever journey or whatever, place we decide to go, whether it's employment, whether it's school, whether it's entrepreneurship, whatever it might be. It's how can we continue to just love each other for who we are. And so that is kind of at the premise of how I try to run my home, how I try to, run my organization, and how I just try to challenge myself every day.
I love that. I love that. So you said a couple things that like really stuck out to me. Um I'll tell you what both of them are, but I think I'm gonna go down one specific path. So one was kind of this concept of choosing your path as instead of like stumbling into it. And I think so many of us stumble into it. But and I shouldn't say but, and the other was this concept of embracing your culture without shame.
Mm,
And I know that I've spoken to a lot of people that have had to kind of navigate that tension,
mhm,
especially with some of the tensions that we face
mhm,
today. So, what was it like for you to, because it, when you were embracing this without shame, it was kind of, it seems like it was kind of before it's become a little bit more popular now, even though some people still struggle with it. What was it like for you to say, you know what, I'm going to embrace this part of my identity and not be ashamed of any aspect of it?
Well, I will say it, in all honesty and transparency, it's not a clear uphill road, right? There's
Mm.
definitely some jagged lines and some bumps and setbacks along the way. And so I know growing up, Spanish is my first language, so that's what we spoke at home. Um, it kind of came at me in a lot of different ways. And a couple of examples is one is when I was in school, I was put into English as a second language classes. And I would always ask my mom, like, I speak English fine. I write and read better than a lot of my classmates. Like, why am I in this kind of like second tier, right? You almost feel like you're second class in some aspect. And my parents didn't really understand the school system here. So they were just like, respect your teachers, do what you're told, try to get good grades, study hard kind of thing. So it was kind of something I just found myself living throughout. And, I'll never negate the fact that mentors and people that believe in you really can be game changers in your life. And I feel like all throughout like elementary, middle school, not really, high school, not really, but community college, like you find people throughout your life that really do kind of push you or help you along the way, right? So I don't think it's something that you ever experience alone. But there was moments, yeah, where I was I questioned things like, why is my mom cleaning houses when all my friends' parents are either stay-at-home moms or they work at a retail store, or like, why that job, right? And why is the food we eat different, right? Like, why than a lot of people around me? Because at the time there wasn't, I mean, the town I grew up in, I'll say now is pretty diverse, maybe even more in terms of communities of color, Black, Latino people you see walking around. But in the beginning, that town was really small, a lot of fields in the area, and I didn't see a lot of diversity, I guess is kind of where I'm getting at with this. And so it was just things that you learn to kind of appreciate over time as you realize that you learn to appreciate kind of like where you came from, and your in my case my parents, like how hard they're working, like really realizing it, and not just realizing it on my own, but having those conversations with them, right? It's being open with them and communicating like what what it is, like how did you get here, and hearing the story and realizing like, geez, that's not easy, like I'm proud of that, and being able to just accept yourself for who you are, and like really enjoy those moments, right? Enjoy, like when I say concerts that I used to go to, like dances and concerts, they weren't in English, they were Spanish concerts, like, and not a lot of, I would have like one friend that I'd go with, right? Because everybody else like, what is that, what band is that? Or you go to those rodeo shows, like, and I'm like, heck yeah, we go to those rodeo shows, I like that, like, and I had good friends. I mean, I didn't have friends that I could always relate to, but I always felt like I had friends that accepted me, even if they didn't understand who I was, right? So yeah, I think it's just, it kind of came to be, but I will say the strongest is probably the family foundation. At least that's what I
Mm,
feel for my personal experience. It was having that strong kind of family communication, enjoying times together, and just like being joyous about it. I don't know. It's kind of a
Yeah.
complicated question. So I know that's not really that clear of an answer, but
No, it's a great answer. I love that that your family foundation is what gave you that pride, and it seems like is the basis for the pride, and not just the pride, the acceptance and pride in
Mhm.
in who you are. So, would you say that that family foundation is also what helped you to choose your path as opposed to stumbling into it like so many of us do?
And you mean by my path, you mean like kind of where I chose to go professionally,
Yeah,
education?
like you were saying, like with your education and stuff like that, you chose it as opposed to stumbling into it. And I found that like very profound because a lot of us, just being honest, we're in the college space and we're like, okay, I could do that. So why not do that?
Mm,
As opposed to really sitting with ourselves to figure out what is it that we want to do. And that's probably the basis for the amount of career changes that so many of us have.
yeah.
And I don't even have to say so many of us that I myself
Yeah.
have found myself engaged in.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's where I think about like mentors and people that believe in you that come into play. So aside from my parents, my sister, my brother went to college, so kind of seeing that as role models, right? Like, okay, they can do it, I can do it, right? But in college is where I really found folks that believed in me, like counselors. I didn't have that in junior high and high school. I had the opposite actually experience of that. It's
Mm.
folks kind of had already predicted my path, if you will. It was like, oh, so you're like, let's sign you up for community college, right? Like no conversation about career beyond and or higher education in the sense of anything beyond that, right? And so wasn't until I kind of started community college that I was really exploring what I wanted to do. I love kind of like classes around psychology and all those things like super fascinate me. Leadership super fascinates me. And in college, you're allowed to explore that, which is the beauty, right? You're like, ooh, there's all these different kind of classes now. I get to choose. But having some really great counselors that were like, what do you want to do? Okay, let's look here, let's look there, and you're kind of just like, wait, what? You really kind of just trust people because you're like and hopeful that the trust is going to get you somewhere, right? And luckily, God's put really great people in my path in that sense, and my parents and kind of the feeling of who I am as I've grown has really kept me grounded and centered in where I wanted to go and what I wanted to do. So not that I knew exactly where I was going to be career wise, but knowing that the path forward was there and I could do it, whatever that might be.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. So when you're also in this space where you have gotten to this place where you have these concepts and you're getting your education, how did you get to the point of, I'm going to ask both because I don't know the sequence of how things happen, where you're like, I'm going to go get my PhD and you know what, I'm going to start an organization. So how did you get from that college space to entrepreneur and doctor?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I feel like, we never stop learning and growing. I'm a 40-year-old woman, soon to be 41. It's my birthday month. Yay.
Hey, let's go. Come on, 40.
Right? I'm like, it's the new 20s, right? Um, so I think we never stop. I know I'm still learning and growing like now, and I don't plan to stop anytime soon. And so I think going through being able to live career wise what I wanted to do and just explore, right? I always knew community centered work was where my heart was. Ever since I was little, my friends would always come to me as like the counselor, right? They'd have a problem or an issue. They'd always come to me and they'd, ask me for advice. They would, have a shoulder to cry on. And so kind of like really focusing on the human um, and their needs was always something I feel was just a part of who I was. And so bringing that into career has been really great, being part of different nonprofits and things. But I always felt like, there's going to be something more for me out there in the future. I don't know when, I don't know how, but it's going to come. And so, um, pandemic happened a few years back, right? COVID hits. And um, prior to that, I was very blessed with a super amazing mentor as my boss. Rest in peace. He passed away. But he really kind of took my thinking to another level in terms of really pushing me and encouraging me to like put myself out there, challenge my own leadership abilities, and maximizing my potential, right? And so he was like, "You got it. You're here at USC. You got to go to school. You got to take advantage of." And I was like, "Wait, no, I'm too old for that. Like, I got kids. I'm married. I don't got time for that." But he'd always sneak it in there. He'd always sneak it in there, like, "So when are you going to sign up?" Or and so he passed. We went through a transition at work with a lot of my colleagues. We got really close. And I was like, you know what? Yeah, it's time. It's time to do that. I need to take advantage of it now. During COVID, I was like, well, everybody's home. Let me do some research. And so the program I did was a fully online program, which I think just fit my lifestyle at the time, everyone being home.
Yeah.
And it was around that time, because of my work, my full-time work, I was already working with small businesses quite extensively. But, like any job, I think, not that it could be a good or bad thing, or in between, but there's limits to what you can do in a job, right? And this is where I feel like I kind of hit that peak where I was like, wait a minute, no, there's more I want to do, there's more I can do. And I don't need a job to tell me that I can't do something. I'm just going to do it on my own. And so that's really where kind of Baya was born, out of this desire to want to do more specifically with Latina women entrepreneurs in my community. Um, and and then taking a class in my doctorate program, we were challenged. It was a creativity and innovation class, challenged to kind of create an organization or a cause that we wanted to support. And that's where really,
Love
like,
that.
I really started kind of brainstorming more like tangibles as to what this would look like. And that was the push I needed to say, I'm just going to launch this off the ground. No one's here to stop me but myself, right? And I'm not going to let that happen. So let's just do it. And I'm very fortunate to have such a beautiful support system all around me, family and friends and colleagues, and have found a lot of support in just getting things off the ground.
Wow. Wow, that's so amazing. Sorry to hear about your mentor.
Mhm.
But this journey that you've shared is so amazing. So, in the process of creating Baya, and working with all of the amazing entrepreneurs that you've had to work with, if you could give any entrepreneur just your 2 cents or any like immediate advice of top things that they should do, or any kind of encouragement, sky's the limit. What would be the advice or encouragement that you'd give them?
Yeah, I mean, I say a lot of things to the women that are part of our community, right? But I always kind of, my tagline is always just keep shining bright, right? Because I feel like we all have an inner light. And sometimes, that light dims for whatever reason. Hardship happens in our life, and, it what we may call a setback may just be kind of a need and a time for rest, and for us to pause and kind of reflect and rethink, and rebuild ourselves and our path forward. But there's always that light is always there. And so, how do we continue to kind of ignite that light brightly in a way where there's self-acceptance, there's self-love, we feel that we can find ourselves in a safe space to be ourselves. So that's something I always tell folks too, is just embrace who you are, be your authentic self. The world needs you. You're here for a reason, and we all need you. Your family, your friends, your community loves you. So those are kind of always the words that I like to lead with. I like to share with our community, and really anyone I kind of come into contact with and I have these types of conversations with.
I love it. I love it. So, in this process of creating Baya and keeping it going. Um, what do you think has been your greatest challenge? And while facing that challenge, how have you continued to shine bright?
I honestly feel like probably the biggest challenge with Baya has just been um having patience, because there's a lot that I want to do. There's a lot that I can do, and we're always our own worst critic, right? We always say that, like, oh, I should have done that differently, or I could have done that and I didn't, or I should be doing this and I'm not, right? And I think it's having giving myself grace and patience to kind of just take my time with it. And really that's the beauty of entrepreneurship, right? I mean, I think it does depend on whether, you start a small business out of need or more out of desire. Um, but at the end of the day, you have control over how fast, how quickly, what you do or what you don't do. And I think there's a beauty to that, right? Because again, I, like a lot of folks that are probably listening, are, and like yourself, we're juggling a lot of things. You may be a parent, maybe you're caring for an elderly loved one, maybe you're a fur mom or dad, right? Like, there's illness in our families or with ourselves, right? There's just a lot of things that happen that a lot of the times are out of our control. There's internal and external kind of factors, right, at play. And so, but we can decide, like, we have control over how fast or how slow we go. And so sometimes it's just trouble with that patience and giving myself that grace to say, okay, yes, I want to do 10 million things, but I have time to do it. So let me just pace myself, right? And trying not to judge myself for perhaps mistakes that I may make along the way. Because I think inevitably we're gonna make them. We're human. We're creatures of, mistakes. And so just, giving myself grace for that, which is what I tell other women to do too. It's easier to say those words, right? But to receive them sometimes is a little bit, hits a little harder, right?
Absolutely. I was watching, I think it's Angie Martinez's podcast RRL with Janelle Monae, her interview with Janelle Monae. And Janelle Monae was saying that one of her key ways that she lives her life is to grant herself permission to be a beginner. And
Mm,
I think a lot of times in this entrepreneurial journey, it's really tough. And
yeah,
I mean, I don't even have to say entrepreneurial. Anytime as an adult we're learning something new,
yeah.
it's really tough to grant ourselves permission to be a beginner.
Mhm.
Because there's always this expectation, like you're at a certain age where you
Yeah,
should just simply be able to do, regardless of what the thing is that
yeah,
you're learning. So I love that concept of being patient and learning how to be patient.
yeah.
So in the space where you're an entrepreneur that has a huge vision of what you want, or maybe you've seen this thing all the way through, what advice do you have for those visionaries and those entrepreneurs that do see it 10 years down the road, that are struggling with hate, not just patience but also priorities?
Yeah. Well, I mean, no one knows you or your journey better than yourself, right? Because there's a lot of us, I'll include myself kind of in that, where, advice is free. We love giving advice, we love giving counsel, right? We love sharing our story. And I think there's a lot of beauty and value to that. And your journey is your own, right? So ultimately it's up to you to make the decision of, again, where you want to go, why you want to go. And it's okay to pivot and it's okay to change. I know pivot was a big word during COVID, and maybe we're tired of hearing that. So let me just use the word change. It's okay to change. It's okay to change your mind. It's okay to change which way you're turning, right? And sometimes we're so fixated on it has to go this way that we're not flexible. It goes back to that word grace. We're not
Hmm.
flexible with ourselves. We don't give ourselves grace to say, hold up, okay, I was planning to go this way, but guess what? All these things happen and now I need to pause and I need to go this other way, right? And so it's that constant, like, self-reflection, sitting with yourself for a minute, taking that time to breathe and pause and just reflect on and make changes if you have to make them, right? Because again, life is not a linear road. No way. I mean, I love these little diagrams that I see where you're like, this is life, and it's like squiggles and circles all over. Like, yes, that is what it is. There is so much going on, right? And a lot of pressures and just things that happen. And so I think that taking the time to reflect and think, and it could be that it's 10 years out. That could be your plan, and that's beautiful. Write it down. That's the other thing I tell women is like you gotta, and it's okay if guess what, that what you wrote down isn't like solid gold and has to go that way either. Flip the page and write a new script if that's not working out, right? And so you gotta write it down though, because what does that do? That helps us be accountable to what we say we're gonna do. It helps us look at it and be able to kind of do that analysis and evaluate and reevaluate if still this is the path forward. It allows us to be creative and innovative in a way that we have a centralized place to kind of like revisit our thoughts, if you will. So there's a lot of value, and as simple as it sounds, I think a lot of the times we don't do that. We don't take the time to kind of write down our plan, and it doesn't have to look pretty, and it doesn't have to follow a template we found online, right?
Yeah.
Get a piece of paper, but just make sure you don't lose it. Keep it close. So yeah, those are just some of the things that I share.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I really loved the concept of what you explained with the life being a lot of squiggly lines and
Mhm.
loops. So if you found yourself at a place where you got to have a conversation with a version of you that's at the end of all those squiggly lines and loops. So you get the opportunity where you get to have a conversation with your 100-year-old self. If you had that chance, what do you hope she'd tell you about the life you lived?
I hope she would tell me that I lived a life where um, I made others feel loved and
Mm.
accepted for who they were, and that I also learned to love myself and accept myself in the process. Um, I think that we talk about as women. I feel specifically, the pressure to um, stand out or be good leaders or do things right, or we put kind of all these rules on us. But at the end of the day, I want to know that whoever I touched in my life felt seen and felt loved. And that to me, I think is definitely a life worth living. And I start with my kids. I'm a mom of 3 kids. I'm so proud of them. They, I don't think there's a right or wrong way to parent necessarily because every kid's different and, things are always changing. But I always want my kids to know that they're loved and know they're worthy and to be kind to themselves. I always tell them that. I'm like, I'm going to tattoo this on my forehead. Be kind to yourself, because we're living in an era today where there's a lot of messaging coming at us. Good, bad, and the ugly, whether you're a kid or whether you're an adult. And it's a lot. It's overwhelming. It could be confusing. It could be demoralizing sometimes. But how can we kind of put humanity at the center of that and just learn to love and accept each other? And I want as my 100-year-old self, I want to look back and say, you loved yourself, you accepted yourself for who you
Mm.
were, and you made others feel that way too. So
That is
that's it.
beautiful. That is beautiful. Oh my goodness. Rocio, you have taken us through such a beautiful journey. You told us exactly where you are, and then you took us on a journey, little time machine back to when you were younger and when you were spending that beautiful time with your parents. You took us on the journey back to the present and then even gave us a glimpse into the future. Thank you so much for all the gems that you dropped on the journey. As we come to a close, what final advice would you have for me or any of our viewers that are working on intentionally curating a better future for themselves and others?
Hmm. also a big question. I think there's a lot, there's a lot to say, but at the end of the day, I would just encourage folks to keep living out their purpose, whatever that may be, and find people in your circle, in your community that kind of not that has necessarily a similar vision, because again, I really feel like everyone's journey is unique, but that can elevate each other and you can build on each other's strengths and desires and dreams, so that we can continue to just be united as a community. There's too much discord out there. It's like, don't let's not fall prey to that. Let's How can we continue to kind of hold hands united and like really uplift each other in a genuine way. And so I challenge folks that are listening, including myself, including you, Amber, to keep living out your purpose and to, keep learning and growing in community.
Ooh, I love that. I love that. So, for people that want to continue that conversation, understanding how to live in community, maybe even connect with you to understand how they could become a part of the Baya community, can you
Yeah.
please tell them where they can find you and how they can get connected?
Yeah. Well, I think probably the easiest, kind of quickest way in our technology world is to just connect with us on Instagram. Some folks might call me antiquated, but I literally only have one social media platform right now, y'all,
I
and that's
love
just
it.
because there's a lot
I
going
love
on.
it.
And so that's Instagram, and it's at Baya Entrepreneurs, all one word, spelled B.E.L.L.A. It's an acronym for the name of our organization.
Yes,
And
say
so
it
that's a good
correctly in Spanish because I did butcher it at the beginning.
Baya.
I was saying say it correctly in Spanish since I butchered it at the beginning so
Oh,
people
you
know what
want
it
the
stands
whole
for.
name? You
Yeah,
want
give
the
us the
whole
whole
thing?
thing.
Okay, here we go. All right, everyone ready? No, it's good. It's Brillantes Emprendedoras Latinas de Los Angeles. And when I was thinking about that name, I was trying to, the first word that kept coming to mind was shining bright. Like I tell you, keep
Mm.
shining your light bright. And so brillante in Spanish means bright, right? And so I think, I definitely wanted to put the word Latina in there. So when I was writing kind of different things out, I realized that this kind of this line, this description that I just read, this name, the acronym spelled out Bella, which in Spanish means beautiful. And I'm like, this is just so perfect. Keep shining bright, beautiful women, basically, is what kind of how I, the kind of summary of that in my
Awesome.
head. So I'm like, this is it. This is the name. And it's okay. A lot of people call it Bella or different things, but it's Bella, and that's how you can find us. Probably on Instagram is the best way to kind of see, kind of feel the tone and culture of who we are. That's a good place to start.
Oh man, awesome. Thank you so much, Rocio.
Yeah,
I
thank you,
appreciate it.
Amber. Thank you
We
for having this
appreciate it.
platform for women to share and to just keep learning and growing with you. It's beautiful. Keep doing it. I love it. I wish you all the best.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And thank you for your platform as well. I've gotten the opportunity to check it out. And if you guys haven't already, please be sure to go and check it out. And for all of our audience members, thank you so much for tuning in. It is truly appreciated. All of your support is truly appreciated. Until next time, let's continue to support, engage, and encourage each other as we work together to curate a FEM future.